Welcome once again to the Doctor of Digital podcast and my special guest today. You're not going to believe this guy who I was convinced to get on this show today. This is Keith, the monk without the funk, Brewer. So, talking about some of the best names that you could ever have in a business. So I just go with the Doctor of Digital. I go for the alliteration, but this guy, I think he one-upped me. This is the monk without the funk. So in any case, welcome to the Doctor of Digital podcast. This is the only podcast that is dedicated to business leaders and CEOs who want to increase their business using social audio. And along those lines, what I do is bring on special guests and interesting people and companies such as Keith. So welcome to the show, Monk Without the Funk. And so tell us a little bit about your background and how is it that you got into this really interesting connection between East and West? What a fascinating area to consider.
Well, thank you for having me on this show, first of all. The East and West, first of all, I grew up in the West, so that's my connection to the West. And I've hear other than traveling out of the country now and then. But when I was about 6.5 years old, I had a string of doctors tell me that because of spinal issues that I have in misalignment and compression of rib cages, all kinds of things, I was going to be paralyzed by the time I was 13.
Oh my!
And after, that was a devastating thing for a kid that was growing up on a farm, and I loved to run around and play dog and climb trees. And the way home, the last doctor's visit, I asked my mom if these doctors all knew what they were talking about. And she pretty much told me it was going to be up to me to prove them wrong. Now, to a kid, I thought that was magical because to me, my mom knew everything. And her telling me that literally kind of told me that she thought I had the power to prove them wrong. So I went out into the woods at night when everybody else was asleep. And just implored the sky to give me something that was going to help. And again, being a kid, I think kids are open-minded. They don't question things. They believe all kinds of things that adults forget how to believe in. And I felt compelled at some point to start moving in certain ways that I'd never moved before.
Okay.
And I literally believe that was something transmitting some information to me in response to my request. So I continued doing these movements. And for the longest time, I didn't think anything about it to anyone because I didn't know what I was doing. I just believed it was going to help. And I thought of it as my moving meditation. And I just kept doing them, and everybody was sleeping. I was doing them by myself at night. And they obviously kept me out of a wheelchair. I never heard anything from doctors again, and I never had to go back. So even recently, a few years ago, a chiropractor was palpating my spine and told me he didn't even know how I walked through the room. But I believe it's all due to these secret meditations, which turned out to be some pretty legitimate Chinese meditations out of our called qigong. I don't really think a lot of people understand qigong in the world today, but I started back then. And once we got off the farm, I continued studying and practicing and learning more and more and more and more. So I've spent my life practicing and delving into what are the depths of the mysteries of qigong. And in today's world, I pretty much call it mindfulness practice.
Okay.
And that's what I think equates to business owners because they're now starting to incorporate a lot of mindfulness into the workplace. So that's what led me into the side of things. And once I understood it was qigong practice, I wanted to know everything there was about these medical philosophies and historical philosophies. And so at this point, I'm really close to my doctorate in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And I studied at an West Medical College, so we've got both sides of the medical system.
Sure.
So I feel like I've got really good solid base of understanding from medicine and what each of the systems can do for us.
And This is a really fascinating area for so many ways. I actually worked at a medical university. I know nothing about medicine. I taught the liberal arts, but it had some combination between holistic type of medicine from the Western perspective, but it was open to these kinds of things. But one of the things I was curious about is that I've seen some of this, and our health view of health and what have you has changed significantly. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the changes that you've seen in health practices over the last several decades and what's been happening in the health field?
One of the big things I think has been changing in the health field is, from the Eastern side of it, they've always done it as a personalized practice. Like their medical system started with qigong, where it was all personalized to you, and what your concerns were, issues were, health concerns, and they would dial in the treatment to you. And the Western medicine really hasn't been like that for a long time. It was very impersonal. It was like, this is what we do for this, this is what we do for that. And I've even seen doctors that come into a room and address a patient, and then start backing out of the room after asking them what their name is. They were just very impersonal.
Yeah.
And just from what we've learned in school, the Western side is starting to swing over to a personalized medical practice. And they're starting to pay more attention to the whole body instead of just your finger hurts, but deal with that. It's all connected. Chinese medicine has always been connected. If you have a headache, it's not just your head. There's something else causing your headache. Mm-hmm. And I really see this coming in Western medicine, starting to look at it more from that point of view.
So, are there things that you can identify that say that are growth areas? In other words, is there a kind of a rapprochement, a connection or interchange between East or West, or there's things that are emerging that you would say can identify that we've been able to discover some new things about health?
Absolutely. I mean, I tend to think that almost everything we know is from Chinese philosophy. We just don't like to admit it a lot of times. I mean, even in the Western medical world now, they're starting to synthesize certain elements out of Chinese herbs and then put it in a tincture and put it in a pill or something. And they're starting to acknowledge that while these Chinese herbs actually really are good for us. And if you go from a Chinese perspective, they're all natural. They don't cause any of the side effects we're used to in the world today. So they're definitely starting to look at that and synthesize those things out. And then on the other end of it, with acupuncture, more and more Western medical practices are offering acupuncture and acknowledging, wow, this can actually really help a lot of things. 20 years ago, I just acknowledged, well, it's a pain treatment, and that's what a lot of people know it for.
Sure.
But more and more, they're starting to think of it for like, wow, asthma. We could treat asthma, diabetes. They're coming more open to the many things that acupuncture and Chinese herbs actually treat.
Mm-hmm. And there are some specific people that you are addressing as well too in your practice, and they're not the younger people, but they're people that are seeing part of the aging process. So I'm one of those people. So I wonder if you could address that, because I'm not a young man, obviously. But what would you recommend people to start thinking about if they're interested in what you do, and what would they consider as they understand a little bit more about what you practice?
What I would actually say is, now, the people I work with, I often don't do acupuncture for them or for them. The qigong or mind practice exercises are the origin of Chinese medicine. It's originally, if you went to a Chinese doctor, they were actually qigong practitioners, and they would diagnose what your issue was, and give you exercises to go home and do for yourself.
Okay.
They were all about trying to turn us all into a position that heals ourselves.
Yeah.
So I would recommend taking charge of your own health with the exercises that I show. And I'm absolutely a fan of that. I've been able to help people, show them things that helped. Like for one example, blood pressure was 200 over 100.
Wow.
And that was on a daily basis, keeping a log of it. They can't even get back to somebody like that, because acupuncture with that high of a blood pressure can actually induce stroke. So they were not able to get back. I was able to show him exercises that he did at home that over a 9-month period brought his blood pressure down to normal range. Brought his cholesterol numbers down to normal range. He continues to practice these practices today. He's over 70 years old. His blood pressure is normal. His cholesterol numbers are normal. So I would recommend someone in your position, for instance, that they just learn these original Chinese medical practices that they can do themselves. There's no side effect. No pills. Once you learn them, it's absolutely free. You just do them.
What types of expertise would you offer? In other words, if a person is not familiar with what you're doing, it's a little bit different than maybe they've experienced before. So maybe you could walk us through your practice and your process. So what types of expertise would you offer a person who is interested in what you're talking about?
I would, in most cases, about everyone, I would come out with a basic posture and breathing method of this style of mindfulness practice. And in a lot of cases, that's all they really need to do. I know a lot of different qigong practices, and they pretty much some things address specific issues and some things are general health issues. But I always start people out with just general posture and breathing. And like I said, in many cases, that's all they need. And they just need a few minutes of practice a day. Originally, the old ancient Chinese would recommend that we all do these for an hour a day. And in today's hectic world, I often say that 5 minutes a day is going to do you a lot of good. It's a cumulative effect. The more you do it, the more benefit you're going to get from it. So you don't need to actually do these for an hour a day. And going from where we're at in our world and our stresses to being calm and just breathing for an hour would seem daunting to a lot of people. So I don't really think it's necessary. I think that since it is a cumulative effect, practice, the more you do it every day a little bit, the stronger and stronger the benefits get.
Mm-hmm. Pretty fascinating and fairly simple too. That's what's really interesting about what you're saying, right?
Right. I mean, I always tend to say simple is elegant work. There's a lot of people, there's 20, 30 years ago, when Americans first started going to China and wanted to learn these things, one of the stories I've read and heard about is that the practices we were shown in the beginning were simple. They're very basic. They're very economical. They're easy to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our reactions was it's too simple that can't work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, yes, simple work. Because the more you have to think about what you're doing, thinking will shut down the flow of nutrients and energy to your overthinking. That's what we do. I mean, that's our superpower in the West. Overthink things. These are simple and they work.
Yeah, it's a scientific and it was a theological principle. It's Occam's razor, that the simplest explanation is the best explanation.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with that. I think if you look at a lot of qigong teachers, they're showing some very complicated things, some very esoteric, high-level stuff.
Yeah.
And you really have to think a lot when you're doing that. And I'm like, the whole key is to be able to get these exercises and turn off your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that the exercises can do their internal work. So it's just like you said. The simplest explanation is the best.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating overview of the Eastern and Western practice, and you've been able to say something about what it is that you do and the process and the technique. So I've learned a lot, and I'm sure other people have as well too. How would you suggest that they get a hold of you, and what's the way that you would interact with them to introduce them to what you're practicing?
They can go to my website, withoutthefunk.com. they can email me from there, or they can email me direct at keithwithoutthemonk.com, and I'll get their emails, and I respond very well to emails. And I recently have been mostly doing mindfulness work for corporations.
Wow.
Because one of the changes I've seen recently in the last few years is that corporations are getting more and more in tune with how beneficial this is in the workplace. It increases productivity, decreases absenteeism, and really helps and increases creativity. So it's really beneficial in the workplace. And I would just And what I'm doing for the corporation right now is I'm offering once a week mindfulness practice away from their desks. One of the big things I want to say before we're done is that the meditation style I teach is standing meditation, which is quite a bit different from what a lot of people are showing with seated meditation. Seated meditations, actually, it's not recommended to just sit for long periods of time. It actually, your brain registers at 20 minutes that you must not be using your lower body. It's not going to just decrease the circulation of blood, nutrient, energy to your lower body. And a decreased circulation in your lower body can cause medical issues like vein thrombosis, ulcers, and all kinds of things. So a standing meditation opens up to your entire system rather than doing that. So I really don't agree with meditation. I don't understand why. So many people are showing it. This is a much healthier way to go. Yeah. So go to my website, send me an email, and I'll get back with you.
Sounds outstanding. So thanks for sharing some of your wisdom, both Eastern and Western wisdom, and if nothing else, you can never, ever forget the name, the monk without the funk. I mean, come on, easy to remember. It rhymes and everything else. So thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast
Thanks so
today.
much.
It was awesome. Learned a lot. Hope everybody else did as well. So thanks for coming in today.
All right, thank you.
You bet. That's it for this particular episode of the Dr. Digital Podcast. Until next time, we got some more exciting things coming for you. Check out show notes and all kinds of contact information and other things as well. Until next time, take care. Deus Vult.